You've probably heard that Magna Carta created modern liberty, but the real story starts not with grand ideals, but with money, greed, and a king who went too far. In early 13th century England, King John turned royal finances into weapons of coercion. Taxes, fines, inheritance fees, everything was used to squeeze the barons. They endured it for years, but when the pressure became unbearable, they rebelled. This is the story of how kings pushed power to the breaking point and how a group of angry nobles forced it back. Let's dive into the real origins of Magna Carta.
Before 1066, England wasn't a place of written rights. Freedom depended on your status. Most people were tied to lords, working the land, paying rents in crops and labor. The king existed, but he was distant. Real power sat with local lords in their halls. Law varied from valley to valley, shaped by custom and influence. After the Norman conquest, William the Conqueror centralized everything. Castles rose, records were kept, taxes became systematic. All land technically belonged to the king. Everyone held it from him in exchange for service. Loyalty upward, protection downward. That was the feudal deal. But the king's word was still final.
John became king in 1199 with a terrible reputation. He'd betrayed his brother Richard, lost wars in France, and saw Normandy and other territories slip away. The cost of those defeats fell on England's barons. He repeatedly demanded scutage, cash instead of military service. Inheritance reliefs soared to outrageous levels. Towns faced tallage, fines became endless. The message was clear: pay up, obey, or be destroyed. John took hostages, seized castles, punished officials unpredictably. He even fought the church over the appointment of the Archbishop of Canterbury, leading to a papal interdict: churches closed, bells silent, daily life disrupted. Barons felt the king recognized no limits. By 1214-1215, the barons had enough. They gathered in the north and around London, demanding a return to ancient customs. They called themselves the Army of God and the Holy Church. London fell into their hands. Key castles surrendered. King John's options narrowed: fight or negotiate. Summer brought open war, sieges, blocked supplies, burning fields. Both sides grew exhausted. Money ran low. Harvest time approached. Finally, they agreed to talk on neutral ground, a riverside meadow called Runnymede. On June 15, 1215, Magna Carta was sealed at Runnymede. It wasn't a declaration of universal freedom. It was a practical fix for the barons' specific grievances. Key clauses: inheritance reliefs capped, no more than £100 for a barony. No scutage or extraordinary taxes without baronial consent. No free man to be imprisoned or stripped of rights without lawful judgment by peers or the law of the land. Fines must fit the offense and the person's means. Protection for the church and merchants. Most revolutionary, a committee of 25 barons could seize royal castles and lands if the king broke the terms. John signed under massive pressure, but he never intended to keep it. He immediately appealed to the Pope to annul it, and Civil war exploded again. The barons even invited Prince Louis of France to take the throne. John died in 1216. His 9-year-old son, Henry III, inherited the crown. The royal regents needed peace to survive, so they reissued Magna Carta in 1216, 1217, and definitively in 1225, removing the most dangerous clauses, like the 25 barons' enforcement power. This trimmed version worked. Everyone wanted stability. Sheriffs followed it, barons cited it, towns and knights used it in court.
It became routine. Magna Carta didn't create liberty overnight. It planted a seed. The king is not above the law. Phrases like lawful judgment and no taxation without consent slowly spread. Over centuries, they grew into ideas of due process, parliamentary power, and limited government. The story shows that freedom isn't granted, it's demanded when power goes too far. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's turning points, subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.
You've heard Magna Carta gave us liberty, but it wasn't born from ideals. It came from a king who pushed power too far. In 13th century England, King John turned taxes and fines into weapons to crush his barons. When they could take no more, rebellion erupted. This is the real story of how Magna Carta forced a king to face limits. King John inherited wars and lost most of his French territories. To pay for failures, he squeezed England dry. Endless cash demands instead of military service, sky-high inheritance fees, brutal fines, even hostages from noble families. He fought the church, too, bringing papal sanctions that silenced bells and closed churches. By 1215, the barons rebelled. They seized London, captured key castles, and cornered John at Runnymede Meadow. On June 15th, he sealed Magna Carta, not a grand freedom charter, but a list of fixes. Cap inheritance fees, no extra taxes without consent, no imprisonment without lawful judgment, fines must fit the crime. Most daring, 25 barons could seize royal property if the king broke the deal. John signed under pressure, then got the Pope to annul it. Civil war raged on until John died in 1216. His young son's regents reissued a milder version in 1225, and this time it stuck.